The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone. This is Paul Schumann here, Product Line Manager at Technical Toolboxes. Just first, would like to thank you for taking your time today and joining us for this webinar. The title of the webinar today is API Inspectors Toolboxes, Stories Told from the Field. We often hear from inspectors in the field that report writing is an incredible time sink and that they've been hungry for a solution that enables them to produce superior work while billing more clients in a given period of time. We'll also take a look at how the industry and economy are adding pressure for asset owners and what this means for API inspectors. We will have a guest subject matter expert and with more than 20 years of experience in the field. Cory Lanphear is going to help share his experiences in the field and how the API Toolbox has shaped his career. The goal here, as always, is to promote professional management, development, and provide thought leadership and provide a platform for subject matter experts in the industry. We hope to raise awareness for the API Inspectors Toolbox and how it provides leverage to win in competitive professional markets. We will look at how the software provides API 510, 570, and 653 inspectors with the ability to double their billable productivity. So we invite you to join and participate in the polls, and we'll complete the hour with a Q&A session. So start thinking now about any questions that you'd like to have answered and post them in the chat box when they come to mind. Cory Lanphear is our guest speaker today, and he's been in the industry for more than 20 years, starting out in his teens. As a youth, he joined his family's business, where he mastered the engineering calculations and inspection report writing. So when he discovered the API Inspectors Toolbox application, he had the experience under his belt to appreciate its capabilities. After the family sold the business, he joined Acuren, the largest NDT company in North America. The company provides asset protection solutions for critical integrity and safety inspection services. Their NDT service clients span a broad range of heavy industry, including pipeline engineering for oil and gas. So before we go on with the formal webinar, we like to launch a poll. And if you could provide your responses here, we will share those with you shortly. Alrighty. So we'll close that off, and it looks like most people are using none of the above, whereas quite a few people are using Excel and Word templates, and others are in third-party software as well as in-house. It's kind of an even mix amongst those four. So we appreciate everyone taking part in the poll. And with that, I would like to introduce Mr. Lamphier. Cory has been in the industry for more than 20 years, starting out in his teens. I'm sorry, I think I already went through that. I guess I just need to turning the floor over to Cory now.
Hey guys, I hope everyone's doing well. Good afternoon. As was said, my name is Cory Lanphear. I'm from Maine, and I am an API inspector up here in Maine, an STI inspector, and a level 2 NDE technician across the board. My history into this industry is as familiar as it is unusual and unique. Now, my tale usually cannot be told without talking about my origins and who I learned from, which is my grandfather, Harland Weber. He was a Maine Maritime graduate, had a variety of different occupations in the industry. He worked with many companies, worked at power plants, paper mills, etc. Stuck to oil and gas a lot. He was an engineer on a ship, and he worked a lot of time out to sea. He then worked for GE and was the head of QA/QC for them for a long time, and then worked for a lot of fabrication companies after. This was through the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Eventually, back in 1986, he won the lottery for Maine and was the first person in Maine to win over $1 million on the lottery, which is pretty cool. And ironically, was the same year that I was born. He took me in at a young age, basically as a son, and I was able to spend a lot of time with my wonderful grandfather. And eventually, when I was 13 years old, he asked me to come and work for him, which was great. At 13, you just want to make some money and you want to do whatever you can. And so he had opened up his own business and basically was a consultant. He specialized in inspecting tanks and pressure vessels. He was an ASME board, a national board certificate holder, and like I said, specialized in tanks, pipes, anything to do with steel. He had some sort of experience in, which was pretty neat. Now, as I got older and I started working my summers with him, my experience grew, and my first job, I always like to tell this story, was with him at a power plant and inspecting a tank, and it was a number 6 oil storage tank. And my job at this time was to help him basically keep the tank clean and to find he gave me a shovel and said, you're going to go in there and you're going to do clean up spots that I want to look at. So I spent my entire week with him in this 150-foot diameter storage tank, scooping sludge and putting it into a bucket for him so that way he could look at the floor. So my summers were spent doing a lot of this, a lot of hole watching, a lot of labor work, and I loved every moment of it. Not only because I was learning a lot, but because I got to spend so much time with this wonderful man, and he got to teach me. As age, moved on, I started to try to figure out what I wanted to do in life, and eventually, I decided I wanted to get into engineering in some way, shape, or form. I went to school for a couple years and did not finish, but I decided at this time I would keep my foot in the door and I would always work for him, which was wonderful. And I eventually started playing music for a living, and like I said, kept my foot in the door. And during this time, he relied on me a lot to complete the reports. Now, at this period of time, there weren't a lot of options for reporting. His reports were very small, very minuscule, and very short. And he was he was allowed to get away with a lot. He did a lot of calculations long-handed, which was great because it taught me how to do them long-handed. And but they were short and to the point, and basically said what was being inspected and what needed to be done, and that was it. He would do the calculations off book, and if they were needed to be included in the report, then he would include them, but oftentimes he didn't. Eventually, with the evolution of the industry and the requirements from a lot of these owner-operators, people started to ask for evidence of calculations in their reports, and therein more information. You couldn't just put in, hey, the tank looks good, or this needs to be repaired, and call it a day. No, you need to have the information in front of you, and more people were quality checking what you were doing. So we dug deeper and deeper at this time, and he experimented with many different programs, and that's how he came upon Technical Toolbox at the time. And it was just a desktop version. It was great. We enjoyed it very much, and again, it was more about verifying accuracy than it was anything else. It was making sure that we were right when we were doing our calculations. Yeah, and so from there, I was here and there out of the industry, in the industry. I jumped back and forth. I wanted to be more involved in it. And eventually, he sat me down and he had a conversation with me about what my future was and what I wanted to do in life. And I told him, I said, you know, I still have a love for doing this, but I don't know what I want to do. This was about in my early 20s. And he said, well, when you're ready, you come to me and we'll talk and we'll figure things out. And I said, okay. So probably a year after I had this conversation with him, sure enough, I find out I'm going to be a dad. So everything changes overnight. My music career was halted. It was going in a great direction. I was doing very successful things with music, but I decided that, you know, I had to put my big boy pants on and be a dad. So I came to him and I sat down with him one day and he asked me, you know, how serious I was about doing this. And I told him I was very serious and I would do whatever it took to be successful at it. When he sat me down, I asked him, I said, what's it going to take? He said, what you need to do is you need to go work for a fabrication company first. He says, I want you to go work as a laborer in a fabrication company that specializes in tanks and tank fabrication. So I did what he asked, and he said, you need to do this for at least a year, and then you can come and you come back to me and we'll figure out what we can do from there. So I said, sounds great. And I said, you know, give me a reason why I want to stay, basically. Give me some hope for my future here. So I did this for a year, and it was a grueling 1 year of me holding someone's bucket and breaking my back to, you know, with the welders and doing what I had to do and learning what I had to learn. But it was very beneficial, and it helped me a lot in my career. All during this time, I was still developing his reporting process. Now, also during this time, he decided to sell his company, for better or for worse. A lot of it had to do with his workload and his age. He needed more help, and this company was willing to help him. This was A+ RTD. After that year, I came to him and I said, I'm ready to take the next step. I said, but, you know, after that brutal year I went through, you know, I wanted some reason to continue this job, continue this career that I'm on. I needed some light at the end of the tunnel. And he said one of the most prolific things he's ever said to me was, he said, the reason why I like this job so much, Cory, is because I get to play detective every day. He says, I get to wake up in the morning and I get to play detective. I get to go out and solve mysteries and figure out solutions to problems. And he says, if you look at it that way, you'll never be bored. And he was right. And so he was able to get me a job at A+ as an assistant with no real background, with no real NDT experience. And I took all my exams and I went and I got my level 2 and every single NDT application I could get. And then I eventually started working for him full-time as his assistant. I was already writing all his reports for him, so it was a good transition. And after a couple years doing that, he retired. And I say retired, and I put quotations around that because anyone who knows anything knows that you never really truly retire from this industry. He loved every moment of it, so he continued to be involved in some way, shape, or form. I went to about a couple months after this, I was offered a job at Acuren Inspection to head up their tank department up here in New England and essentially bring a bunch of clients with me. My grandfather's relationships became my relationships, and it only grew from there. So I made the leap over to Acuren, and it was a great decision, and they treated me really well. And that is when I started to kind of come into my own and to learn more about technical toolbox. I needed a program that was going to keep up with me and keep up with my workload, and also, especially at this time, be accurate. with the evolution of the industry also becomes the evolution of people knowing more and people expecting more. Unfortunately, there's always going to be someone who will come up against you and say you're wrong when, even though you might think you're right. And the most important thing is to have an open mind about it and to try and keep the glass half full, which is what I've always tried to do. And knowing that there's always space to fill. And that's the biggest benefit that I found with Technical Toolbox, with API Toolbox, is that they've been able to fill my cup up more and more as time goes on. I continue to develop my own program for reporting, and I slowly implemented their techniques and their calculations into my program. I built mine from scratch, and which I'm very proud of to this day, and it only continues to evolve and get better. Yeah, it just continued from there. I eventually had a lot of success with this company, and I also would like to include a couple stories that I have of how this really came into effect and how my experience with Technical Toolbox has benefited me. The best example of the calculations that I can think of off the top of my head is a competitive company that I was doing work up in Canada on a project. I had a call from their engineering department, and they had a problem that they were running into with their calculations. And they were calling for those who don't know about storage tanks, they were having shell settlement issues, which is when there's deflection on the edge of the tank. And they were calling a tank bad and that it needed a new bottom based upon their calculations. Now, unfortunately for them, this other company, they weren't sending the API directly on site. The API was doing the report and doing the calculations, which is an issue within itself, and a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But they were also completing their calculations via their own program. So in one phone call, I spoke to this guy on the phone, this engineer on the phone. We discussed it, and I said, well, send me your work, and we'll go from there. So I went through it, and I put everything into API Toolbox and was getting different results from them first and foremost. And I had to double check my work long-handed just to make sure that everyone was right. Turns out I was right. And which happens all the time, and it wasn't a big deal. Now, what I ended up having them have to do was send one of their guys out to take the readings again. Now, what I had them do instead was take them a different way. I had them take it based on the way API Toolbox does it, which is very different from a lot of other places. And when they did, they got the same results, and the calculations were wrong on their end and right on ours. So there was a flaw in their program that they weren't seeing. And if they hadn't reached out, they would have had to try and replace a whole new bottom on this tank for no reason. The tank was in fine shape, and it turned out it was just a small bulge that was causing this problem. It wasn't an actual deflection of the shell. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Another story I ran into with finding with the calculations was one of my clients had an issue with, actually had me do their 510 inspection on their pressure vessel for their propane tank. Now, after doing the UT on site, everything looked fine to me. I didn't see a lot of issues. There was minor evidence of corrosion occurring externally, but not severe corrosion. Very, very minor amounts of rust, which is common in New England with the weather the way it is. If you have a tank that's outside or a vessel that's outside, it's apt to get some rust, unless you're doing some amazing maintenance on it, which I am always persistent on telling owner operators to do that, especially if you have a vessel, pressure vessel outside, you must maintain it the best you can. And what I mean by that is by painting it over and over and over again, keeping that coat as good as can be, especially with units that don't corrode from the inside. Propane in particular will have a zero corrosion allowance, which is fine, especially because propane doesn't corrode. Now, the problem that with this particular unit was that it, based on the U1, I ran the calculations through API Toolbox, and it turned out that the T-min was also equal to the nominal value of the shell of this tank. The variance did not allow for more than, I want to say, 5/1000ths of an inch, and I was getting readings over 20 thousandths less than the nominal thickness, which is an extreme for, unfortunately, for this type of vessel. And I said, well, we have kind of a problem here. Maybe we should derate the tank. Well, turns out you can't derate a propane vessel based on the fire code. So kind of long story longer, after all was said and done, they decided they had to actually scrap this tank, this vessel, because there was either they had to do a fitness for service analysis on FEA, or they had to scrap it. They decided to scrap it. And turns out, after sending me several of their other U1s for their other propane tanks all around the United States and Canada, the same company that built that particular propane tank had built the other ones, and the same thing was happening right across the board. So this became a bigger problem than initially was suspected. And thanks to API Toolbox, I was able to give them accurate results every single time. And they're still in the process of figuring out what they're going to do about it. So I always thought that was kind of a cool story. Another kind of small, unique one that I always ran into was that I had just a simple NDT UT job recently, and it was on a small pressure vessel. It was a heat exchanger at a paper mill, and I was just UTing it to determine the quality of the steel for an insert repair, and which was fine. And so I went and did that, and I asked them, I said, well, what is your T-min value for this, so that way I can tell you if something's, what your flag is here. And they really didn't know. They were not prepared for it. And I said, well, that's not a problem. I said, I'll find it for you right now. And I said, if you have the U1, I will tell you what it is right now. So lo and behold, I pulled out my laptop right on site, and right in front of the owner operator, I showed them how I completed my calculations. They were insanely impressed with the not only the accuracy, but the speed that I was able to get this information, and they asked me to include it in my UT report, which for a couple extra bucks I was happy to do. So I thought that was always neat, and that goes to show you how viable this program really is, and how it's just evolving more and more over time. I have really enjoyed the engineering module, where you're able to really pick and choose what you want to do for calculations. That is the most wonderful part about this program, is that there's basically, if there's an engineering calculation that you need completed, they've got it. And I've utilized almost every single one, where even when it comes to 570 or 510, on a daily basis, I'm jumping into this program and using it. As far as using it in my own reports, that was where things got complicated. And at first, what I did was I imported or I exported therein the PDF version. Each module allows you to print off a PDF version of what you've come up with your calculations, a small report. I printed these off and I would export them as photos and then insert them into my reports. So that way I could keep the same page number in my reports as opposed to adding them as an attachment. I do all my reports in Word, and I've developed my own program in Word. So it allows me to, with tabs in Word, that allows me to jump around and keep my pages all together. I have an index, and I have my table of contents, which reflects directly upon what I'm doing in my report as I'm building it. So at first I had to just take a picture, basically take the PDF and export it as a photo and insert it into my my reports. That worked for a long time. I did that for years, and it was great, and I had no complaints about it because they were basically giving me everything I needed. Eventually, formatting became an issue for me, and out of aesthetically pleasing myself, I decided to develop my own my own tables, looking very similar to theirs, but like I said, a little more aesthetically pleasing for my reports themselves. These were just tab-based. I was just copying and pasting, or really just looking at the information that their report that they gave out and just putting it in myself. No real changes there. So like I said, over time, it got better and better and better, and that's how I'm using them now, and it works out great. And every single time I talk to these guys on the phone, not only does our relationship grow and I learn more about the company, but I learn more about what they're doing. The access to information they have is absolutely incredible. They have it benefits me every single day in the field. Anything I have a question about, whether it's materials or repairs or stress levels, anything I have, they've got it in there some way, shape, or form. The ability to put in a material type and get the stress value immediately is so beneficial on so many levels, especially when it comes to API 510. So yeah, and like I said, this has been a huge benefit in my career in so many ways, and I only hope to continue the relationship with these guys. Every time I have a question, they always answer, and again, it's only gotten better and better as time goes on. So hopefully it continues. Yeah, I think that would be about it, guys. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me as well.
Cory, definitely appreciate it. I'm not sure I kept up on the slide deck as fast as you were going through, so I apologize for that. And just want to kind of take again into the going forward. So basically, in the industry, efficiency and competitiveness will remain paramount for code-regulated industries. Competition is and the diminishing returns of conventional practices and economic adversity compel companies in all industries and sectors to push hard to find new efficiencies. Oil and gas and related petrochemical industries face destabilizing price volatility due to many factors. While COVID-19 will pass eventually, many uncertainties will remain, and other factors such as supply chain disruption will continue to apply pressure. Net zero sustainability initiatives and electric vehicle adoptions imply further unpredictable changes for storage tank capacity. Regulation and community resistance restrict new projects. The implications for inspectors are that bidding for contracts will be more competitive. Only the smartest, most efficient teams that adapt to new reality are likely to survive. So the API, as Cory had mentioned, the API solution from Technical Toolboxes has evolved and grown with the power and computational of data storage. Innovation has reduced the cost of computation and given rise to the best-in-class solutions. Inspectors and inspection services have that to offer better data management and automation for unmatched productivity. Calculations that were once tied to spreadsheets can be stored in unified databases. The software from Technical Toolboxes gives you the expanded data integration and efficiency initiatives to stay ahead of the pack. So the API Toolbox sits on what we call the hub um, desktop, or both available in a desktop and a cloud form. But it sits on an integrated data environment, and it allows basically data and information to flow from your specific company into a ground floor, which then can be fed up into different applications that you use in the hub environment. So API Toolbox and the solution is one of the several that technical toolboxes offer. And basically, again, once calculations that you were doing in spreadsheets for a particular asset, if you will, those values and input values can be leveraged across several different applications to basically give you a complete analysis in a variety of different environments. I think that's just repeated the same. So the pipeline hub from Technical Toolbox is, again, the integrated data environment for engineers and inspectors. The latest hub release integrates the modules and features from API Toolbox. It contains all of the calculations utilized by inspectors for API 510, 570, and 653 inspections, and the report builder to publish the final report. The desktop canvas environment of the hub displays the module page with menu selections, interactive forms, and a hierarchical navigation. Technical Toolbox provides the calculational tools to perform best. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. I was on the different slide here. So this is a little bit of the history of products and services for technical toolboxes as they relate to API Inspectors Toolbox, in that we initially obtained the IP, the intellectual property for the toolbox, in a partnership with Eagle Inspections. It was brought into a cloud-based environment probably 10, 12 years ago. And then that, in combination with our flagship software, Pipeline Toolbox, those two got integrated into a hub and integrated data environment about 3 years ago. And so those three are kind of the standard kind of backbone, if you will, of the hub environment. And the other thing that we also have in that hub environment is PRCI is an authorized reseller, or we are an authorized reseller for PRCI products. So if you're familiar with on-bottom stability software, maybe Hot Tap Toolbox, things like that, we sell those products as well. We also offer training courses to enhance your technical development, if you will, and those come along with professional development hours. So with that, we will go to the second poll, which, here we go, I'm sorry. So hopefully you see the poll on your screen. Looks like it's coming through. And also, while everyone's working on the poll, just a reminder too, I think on your control panel there should be a red arrow at the top of the control panel pointing to the right. And if you expand that, there will be a place where you can type in any questions that you may have for Cory. We'd like to make this completely engaged, and if you can interact via that, we will have Joseph lead us through the question and answer. All right, so it looks like everybody has pretty much finished that, and so I'll actually share those. We'll see if that comes through. Looks like it does. So it looks like the majority is that people are doing a hybrid of A and B, which is kind of provided by your own company, or you do it on your own. So, and so with that, I think we will continue on. So after the webinar here, everyone is we appreciate everyone's time, but going through the webinar, you can ask yourself, hey, what are the next steps? First of all, we'd love to engage you in Q&A so that you can maybe identify or understand from Cory some of the things that he's gone through, how it's helped him, what's been best for him. And so we'd like, again, as I've mentioned earlier, if you can engage in the Q&A, we will go through those and get to as many of those as possible. And you can also talk to a representative here at Technical Toolboxes to answer any questions about the software, and or if you'd like to understand what professional development is available on the training end of the organization, we'd be more than happy to do that. So at this point, I will turn it over to our Senior Engineering Performance Advisor, Mr. Joseph Ladner, who will guide us through the question and answer session.
All righty, thank you, Paul. Hopefully you all can hear me loud and clear. For the next half hour here, well, kind of 25 minutes, we're going to be doing a Q&A with Mr. Cory Lanphear. But, you know, what I first wanted to do is thank everyone for taking the time out of your busy days to attend this webinar. Hopefully you found it to be beneficial, and we'll certainly have more questions and answers coming up here. What I wanted to do is just first, before I hand it over to Cory and answer questions, is just make everyone aware from an educational standpoint. We have a lot of different collateral. I see questions kind of rolling in about sample reports. I'll get to that here in a second. Of what we can provide you to educate you on our platform. You know, we have various success stories of organizations, operators, service providers utilizing our software and how it helped them, the ROI they got from the software. Example reports, whether it be 510, 570, we have a lot of 653. If you're interested in those, we'd be more than happy to share them. Just let us know via the chat bar. And also we have many other items we can guide you along the way. So be on the lookout from, you might have got an email from him before the webinar asking for any upfront questions. It's my colleague, Stuart Como. So just be on the lookout for that name. He does work here with us, and he'll be reaching out to you all for questions or next steps if they're not answered here today. So be looking out for Stuart. What I wanted to do first before the Q&A is, Mr. Lamphier, first and foremost, sir, cannot thank you enough for joining today. I cannot tell you guys and gals that have joined what a busy man Cory is. I feel like every other time, Cory, I'm giving you a call, you're always like, hey, Joseph, yeah, I'm in the bottom of a tank right now, man. Can I call you back? And that's no kidding. I think he actually told me that on Friday last week. So, Cory, you're incredible. Even there's times where some of our current clients will give us a call, and maybe our internal SME or our developers are out of pocket. I'm like, man, I know I can call Cory. He's going to take my calls. So even sometimes where I feel like I'm abusing the relationship Cory and I have. But Cory, first and foremost, you're incredible, man, and very much appreciate you spearheading this for us. But now that you know the audience want to hear from you. So we have some questions rolling in from participants, and just kind of want to ask them to you, Cory, as they come in. And if you're ready, Cory, I got some questions for you. If you don't mind answering them, please, sir.
Sure, absolutely, Joe.
So first question is, you know, there's obviously a lot of different software platforms out there for API inspection or internal platforms. And one of the big hiccups in that is the intuitiveness, or how easy it is to learn how to utilize those software platforms. And we don't have to go through and name them all, but there's a lot of them. And in your opinion, Cory, just your open and honest opinion, the API Inspectors Toolbox, how easy it is to learn, how easy it was for you to get onboarded to it, you know, retain the information. Could you go into detail a little bit of that, please, sir? If that was kind of the first question we got.
Absolutely. So I want to preface that I am not a certified API 510 and 570 inspector. With that being said, I am doing a lot of 510 and 570 inspections with our in-house in our company 510 and 570 certified inspectors. And I have basically taught myself through API Toolbox how to do proper inspections. In my opinion, one of the biggest downfalls in this industry, and something that I've ran into a lot, is that there aren't enough qualified inspectors out there. And when I say qualified, I don't mean that they have the certification. There's a lot of certified inspectors, but there's not a lot of qualified. Fortunately for me, I had this wonderful experience of having someone like my grandfather who had all this vast amount of information that he gave me. And one of the things that he always taught me was that a true engineer is not someone who has all kinds of calculations going on in their head and knows everything. A real quality inspector is someone who knows where to find that information. And the greatest part about this relationship I've had with API Toolbox is the access to information. Being able to have a question about something, and just by putting the calculations and starting the calculations in the program, I'm able to basically teach myself how to do the inspection properly. It has always been an unfortunate part of this industry where you know, you're not really required, and it's not really regulated to making sure that people know what they're doing when they get out in the field. And it's become more of a 70-30 job, where it's 30% of the job is performed in the field and 70% of the job is performed in an office. And unfortunately, it's even more lopsided when it comes to the education behind it. As I said, I have been super blessed and unbelievably grateful that my grandfather taught me the way he did. He was very adamant, to make a long story longer here, he was very adamant that I learned the hard way. And I'm unbelievably grateful for that. It has molded me and shaped me into the person I am. And to veer back to the API Toolbox here, it has allowed me to jump into this program and to learn what I needed to learn as I go along. And that is what makes it so easy to use, is that you're able to basically learn how to do these inspections and to know what to look for based on what the program is telling you to find for information. And that's a big deal, especially when there is a lack of history to a lot of these tanks and a lot of these vessels and a lot of this piping. There's a lot of gaps in our history, and it's only up until the last 10, 15 years where people are actually starting to be like, oh, we need to have these things inspected at a proper interval, and the states are now starting to come down on people. So it's important that we all know what we're looking at. And like I said before, the battle with information is that everybody knows it now, and so people are calling you out on a regular basis, and you need to be able to CYA as much as you can.
Awesome.
Like I said, long-winded, but I hope it covers what you're looking for.
No, you did, and I appreciate that in the background, Cory. I'm gonna. You mentioned 510, so if I skipped over anyone's questions as it came in, I apologize, but I'm gonna kind of keep this together. I got a couple of questions on 510, and you know, one of them I can pretty easily answer, of just, you know, sending over sample formatting or reports that involve pressure vessels, 510 reports, of course. If you would like to see an example report from our program, just put in the chat bar that you would like to see one, and Stuart will happily follow up with you, one of our colleagues here, with a sample report. Now, with that being said, Cory, stay on the story of 510, and I won't say any last names, but we had a question from Greg of just giving another example on API 510, and I think it's a high-level question, but would you just have a very maybe 1 to 2 minute short story of where an example of a 510 inspection for a pressure vessel, where you utilized it, where it came into play, how you utilized the program for it, and how it benefited you?
Ah, interesting. Okay. Very good question, and good. It's good that you asked me to keep it short-winded.
I prefaced.
You know me too well. So, and I would try to keep it as general as possible and say that this is every single vessel I do. Every single vessel I do, I utilize this program. There is not a tank or vessel or pipe that I look at now without utilizing this program. I use it for everything. The team min values, especially for API 510, is is the thing that you need the most. And if you're taking UT data and you have and you have to come up with a flag for what your minimum allowable is. I mean, it's important to have, and you need to have those calculations. And this program does you right by it on many levels. Not only does it give you the shell team in, but it'll give you the different types of heads that you're looking at. You know, whether it's ellipsoidal or concave or whatever it may be, they have this availability in there. Like I said, it's vast, and there's depths of this program that I haven't even reached myself, and I only look forward to getting to them, and I'm sure that they'll pop up at some point in my future. So like I said, every single tank I use, every single inspection I do, I use this program 100%.
Awesome. Thank you, Cory. We're gonna go from probably about a 10 to 30,000 foot question. We're gonna get pretty technical on you, Cory. So hopefully you're ready for it. We're gonna go into tanks. The question specifically, I'm gonna try to be as detailed as possible for you, is how should we properly inspect for compromised pontoons on an external floating roof tank? And if we find one that's partially filled, what should we do? What would be your opinion there, sir?
So the initial proper inspection is a visual inspection on these things. One of the greatest pieces of advice I ever got as not only just an inspector, but as a technician, was someone said to me one time that no matter what you're doing for your inspection or your NDT, the most important thing to remember is that you're a visual inspector first. Everything is visual. So no matter what you're doing, you want to look at what you're looking at first. If you can't find it visually, that's what the NDT is for. But most of the time, you're going to see what you need to see visually. If you have a pontoon that is filled or semi-filled with some liquid, that means that you have a leak somewhere. There's a crack in it in some way, shape, or form. So in order to find that, like I said, you either visually inspect it. What I like to do is, for every pontoon inspection I do, I do a hammer test, and I go around and I whack it with a hammer. I hit every pontoon with a hammer, mostly to find out if it's filled with liquid. If it's filled with liquid, then I investigate and I will visually inspect it. If I can't find it visually, there's some sort of leakage somewhere. So doing a liquid penetrant or PT of the seams is usually a suggestion that I make, especially because a lot of these are going to be stainless steel or aluminum.
Gotcha. Appreciate that, Cory. We're going to stay kind of technical, and if you don't mind, sir, questions are rolling in. We might not be able to get to everyone, but if we don't, we'll certainly be following up with you. So, Cory, it looks like we have some users across the pond. I say users, just organizations, people, meaning that in probably Europe or Middle East or Africa, whatnot. So, question for you is, this is maybe kind of your opinion thing, Cory. What do you think of the 10-year hydrostatic renewal test required in European regulations, i.e. pressure equipment must undergo a 10-year requalification after 10 years of service, internal, external visit, plus a hydrostatic test? I don't know if you've heard of that, Cory, but question from some people, a couple of them from across the Atlantic there in Europe.
Yep, I absolutely, and I have heard of this, and I think it is absolutely great. I wish that it was a requirement in the United States. Now, unfortunately, the problem with that is that it would have to be state regulated. At the end of the day, the owner operator makes all the decisions. API is only a recommended practice. It is not a requirement for them to do. Some places use it as a requirement, but it is not a requirement. The owner operator can do whatever the heck they want to do, and often do. You can tell them that they should do this type of repair, and a lot of times they'll do a different one. And it all comes down to the almighty dollar at the end of the day, if they can afford it at the time. And unfortunately, filling up a tank with water or a vessel with water or a piece of pipe with water is actually not very expensive. It's the disposal of it that's where it gets expensive, and that's why they choose not to do it a lot of times. I love the idea of doing it because, in my opinion, it's a great insurance policy, and I wish that they would. And I often do suggest it for a lot of pressure vessels and tanks, especially if there's repairs. Per the code, they require it if you're doing certain repairs. So I often will say, just do it. It's worth it at the end of the day. It may cost you upfront, but it's in the end, you're going to benefit from it to no degree. And even if it was, you know, an extension of maybe 20 years, it depends on the condition of the unit, to be honest. That's just my opinion of it. But they're all required to be tested, hydrostatic tested at the beginning, and they're when they're initially fabricated anyways. So like I said, it's kind of state regulated at the end of the day, and I wish I had more of a say in it, but that's more up to the owner operator.
Awesome. Thank you, Cory. Well, gonna have another question for you here in a second, but yeah, we're getting a fair amount of questions just in regards to the reporting aspect of the software itself, which, you know, quite frankly, from a little historical perspective, everyone, you know, the program is you can really break it up into thirds of the robust capabilities it provides, and obviously reporting is one of them for 510, 653, 570. And anyone that's requesting examples, we'd be more than happy to send that to you. But on that, Cory, so obviously you utilize the software for many different ways, and you know, whether it's remaining life calculations, whatever it may be, you run this for your code bytes, referencing, run the calcs, and then you know you have your own reports that you inputted on. So, but regards to the reporting, Cory, just this is kind of a from your perspective question. How does this solution, and I'm assuming this means the software, obviously, from Technical Toolboxes, helps to give you clear and fast results for producing fast reports? We got a couple of questions, so I kind of combined this into one. So it's basically, can you explain in further detail, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
From the efficiency standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of the day, like I was saying before, the evolution of this industry is become very informational, and not only do people want more information, they want it turned around faster than ever before. And that is a battle I fight every single day without fail. And the thank goodness that API Toolbox, not only do they give me my calculations immediately, right on the spot. It's via the cloud. I can be anywhere and get access to this information. But it stores everything as well. It's a giant database of information. So every time you do a type of calculation, and it being separated for each type of thing, you're able to save your reports and save everything that you've done as you go along. And it literally creates a database for you so you can re-access that information at any point in time. And having the printing capabilities is wonderful. And when I say printing, I don't mean printing onto a printer. I mean either into Word or into a PDF form. Very beneficial at the end of the day, especially when needing to log your information, having your own database. So yeah, that's essentially the access to it makes it so efficient on so many levels. And like I said, there's no delay, and in my opinion, there's no real competition as far as the amount of information that it provides and how you're able to access it, how a layman can go in there and just learn it overnight and say, okay, well, guess what, you need to go find the pressure for this pipe, and we need to know what the minimum allowable pressure is, and you can go in there and know nothing about piping, and it basically tells you right then and there. So I always thought that was really neat. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I can even take it a step further. So you know, I have an example, and I won't use any names or organization names, but you know, an operator has this standardized across their practice. Huge, very important client of ours, and you know, I'm pretty close with the manager over there, and he doesn't necessarily use the program like you do, Cory. He's inspectors or his reliability engineers do, and but what he does do is the software provides you the capability to obviously the repository standpoint of accessing former reports, data, whatever it may be, but being able to share reports amongst your organization, for either standardization, looking up historical reports, how you can use yours from a formatting standpoint. You can easily share reports amongst your team. If you're from in a management perspective and you want to look at what your guys and gals are doing there from an internal standpoint, you have an audit coming, or such as your case, Cory, as a service provider, you're going to be giving something to a client, maybe, if you're in management and you want to see what's going out before it goes out, that can easily be done when you are all in the software. So, from the reporting standpoint, it's, so much so standardization, easy access to data. I love what you mentioned, Cory. You got the capability of utilizing this in the cloud. You can also, heck, if you need it to be literally installed on your desktop, you're in a remote location, you don't have Wi-Fi access, it can be installed on your computer as well. So both are at your fingertips and readily available. So we have 5 minutes left. Cory, going to try to get maybe another question or two in for you, sir. With the program itself, I know most of your experience has been in 653 and 510, Cory. Do you have much experience in the 570 portion? Have you dabbled in that? Is it, I guess, but the question really stems from how easy is it for you to kind of cross-train yourself to go from 653 to 510 to 570? Have you gone into 570 much? Do you see that being a big hurdle?
Yeah.
Learning the program?
Yeah, so great question. And basically what you're told, and I don't know, I'm sure everyone's told something differently, but what I was told when I first started taking my examinations for my API 653 was that was going to be the most difficult one. Now, for me, it wasn't, to be completely honest. I found that but that was because of the information that I'd already had. I'd already filled up my cup with a lot of information about how to do an API 653 inspection. When I went to take the examination, it was very easy. Transitioning over to 510 was a challenge to some degree. It was a challenge because I needed to learn. There's so many things that are different. They look the same a lot of times, but they're totally, to me, there's so much more on the line with pressure tanks or pressure vessels and with pressure pipelines. And transferring from 510 to 570 is actually a much easier transition because they're so similar. And it's kind of like the happy medium between both, to be honest. I found that jump was actually the easiest jump, was learning how to do any 570 work. And I do a lot of it. To be honest with you, I probably do more 510 and 570 work these days than I do 653, only because of the intervals of inspection, because they're shorter.
Understood. I appreciate that, Cory. So final question for you, sir. It doesn't even have to be related to the API Inspectors Toolbox. I think this will be a good one to end it on. What advice do you have for people that are maybe in management that are left on the webinar for inspection, reliability, engineering, someone that's been in the industry for 1 year, someone's been in the industry for 50 years? With the industry ever evolving, and I know you more than anyone always have your ear to the ground, what advice do you have for people that have joined all over the world today? From you, an expert, to everyone else that is on?
Well, that's a great question, Joseph. And I appreciate you guys having me on, by the way. At the end of the day, my biggest grievance, and as I have said, is the lack of proper experience and training. Now, with that being said, there is my favorite saying of all times: "There's never one tank that's the same as the others," and that is a hard truth. There's no way I will ever learn as much as I want to learn. My grandfather left me some huge shoes to fill, and I don't know if I'll ever fill them, and I don't know if I ever want to fill them. It's a continuous process of me learning, and every day is exciting because I feel like that there's never one thing that's the same as the other. It's always interesting, and there's always more for me to learn. And if I could give any advice to people who are doing this or trying to develop a program or trying to start their own inspection, format, is that you really need to get out there, and you need guys who, you need to be training better. I really just feel that way. I feel like that there just needs to be more training. And I have been promoting to not only to Technical Toolbox, to you guys, Joseph, but to many places that I'm starting to become more interested in teaching, because a lot of my time I spent with Acuren in general has been teaching. I have been jumping from office to office since I basically started here, teaching guys who have the certification, who have already certified to do these inspections, and have zero experience in an actual tank. There is a routine for not only just tank inspections, but pressure vessels and piping. There's routines that you need to learn, and to things to look for and to keep an eye on. And like I said, you're never going to see something that's identical to the other. There's always something unique and something different, and you need to know how to problem solve it. One of the greatest attributes my grandfather ever left me with was the ability to problem solve. He said he'll never know everything. He says, but at the end of the day, if you can problem solve, if you can be a good problem solver, you can be a good inspector, because that means that you're always looking for a solution. And I always thought that was really neat. And I always take that with me every day. And I try to promote that to every person I talk to. Don't be a know-it-all, be a problem solver. Be the person that you can, that you can go out and search for the answers. And the greatest thing about having API Toolbox is it's a great way to solve a lot of my problems. And a little common sense goes a long way too. So.
Yeah, I can never stray away from that, especially in our industry. Cory, right. Well said, sir. I love kind of ending on that one, especially from an industry SME and expert like yourself. At least that's how I look at it. I'm sure everyone else that joined the webinar today does as well. So for everyone that joined, can't thank you enough. Any questions that we left off, we have this documented, and we'll be following back up with you. Cory, very much appreciate it. Really do appreciate your time and assistance, sir. Might be some questions overflowing that we might reach out for your assistance on here and there without bothering your busy schedule. But thank you, everyone, for attending. Hope you found this to be beneficial. We'll be reaching out to you all. Have a great rest of your day and take care. Thank you.